Speed seduction has unfortunately had a rather bad reputation over the years due to the claims that it was manipulative or misogynistic, all of that. Personally, I would say I learned a lot more about neuro-linguistic programming by studying speed seduction than in the books on traditional NLP, because speed seduction to me made all the language skills from NLP much more practical. In this video, I will tell you how my abilities around women, but also in any kind of conversation, definitely improved because of it, and how it led to some rather interesting scene that I'm not sure I can talk about on YouTube, but let's see. First of all, as a disclaimer, no matter how people like to demonize the field of pickup artists and all of that, I think it was actually the whole self-help for men back then, of 10-20 years ago, was actually way healthier than what it is today. Which has also been said by some of the older coaches who were there back then.
I had this love-hate relationship with what the pickup artist movement was. At the end of the day, all pickup really was making some jokes and approaching and talking to girls.
Shit. Fuck. Shit. Fuck. Stop laughing at me.
And then I think what ended up happening is certain people grew in different ways. It just didn't age well, to be honest. It left room for a much creepier version, you know, like red pill podcasts, bash women, you know, like what the manosphere became is much more something that I can't really stand for than what we were doing back then.
So has there been some abuse of those techniques? Well, like in any personal development field, obviously yes. Now, if you have been like me in that field 10 years ago and you have been around guys who were doing that, you know what it felt like, what it was like. It was just guys very insecure, usually introverts, who had trouble acting confident around people. And we were trying to reassure each other, make jokes to each other, to try to elevate ourselves. That was basically all about it. So all this stuff about, yeah, it is manipulative, can you just go past that bullshit once and for all? But back to speed seduction. In the very beginning, like many people, I was just trying to read all those scripts, all those hypnotic scripts, those seduction patterns word for word, and even writing down some of my own, using the same ideas that Ross Jeffries had been talking about, and trying to come up with something original of my own and memorizing it. And then I remember I was trying to use it during some dates with some girls I was dating from college, or from a friend of a friend, whatever, sometimes even with female friends, so just for practice, or to try to stick the pattern in the conversation and notice the reaction. The positive value I can remember from this is definitely it was making the conversation more interesting and more stimulating. Simply because those patterns from Ross Jeffries and people around him back then were made from studying what is naturally compelling and stimulating for a woman to talk about. They did not just pull those patterns out of their head, they really try to figure out, okay, when women talk to each other, what are the kind of things they keep talking about and what are the things they get mentally or emotionally stimulated by. Because of that, my conversations started to sound more interesting, and I could see the girls I was talking to more alive during the conversation, more stimulated. But did that get me any date or any relationship? Definitely not. So it was not like a big improvement. It was interesting to study those, but it didn't really bring anything massive into my skills around women or into my relationships overall. However, there was a big epiphany into my understanding and into the studying of those hypnotic NLP techniques for seduction. It was what Ross Jeffries calls the twin brothers game, which you may have read about or heard about. It is basically a game using the technique called double binds. So you offer two choices to somebody, and actually those two choices are leading to the same direction. The idea here was to start making the person you are on a date with to think more pleasurable thoughts or more intimate thoughts. For example, you would ask her if you met two brothers who are identical, who are exactly the same, but one of them is great at giving massage, great hands, but the other one has a lot of money. Which one would you pick? And we don't really care which one she says she wants. It is just about making her starting to open that drawer of thinking intimately about what she enjoys about a man or about a relationship, just opening that emotional filter, if that makes sense to you. When you start making her think and feel more intensely things that she likes about relationships, about the men she has dated in the past, whatever, she will be much more engaged in the conversation and engaged around you.
So same scenario, same twin brothers, one of them makes you laugh more than anyone you've ever met your whole life, but the other one is an absolutely incredible kisser. Which one do you pick? Kisser, really? Look at her skin tint. Really? So, if you were to meet someone who you thought was an incredible kisser, what do you think makes for an unbelievable kisser? I mean, or like if someone kissed you, do you think they would think you're an incredible kisser?
Yeah.
Yeah, really. My friend was saying that
So I memorized the whole script word for word, or at least the big ideas of all the critical double binds questions, and I tried to use it in a day, during a date I had. I think that girl was the friend of a friend I met during a party, whatever. During that date, we were at a restaurant, dinner, and at some point I tried to use that little game. And to be honest with you, I was kind of disappointed at first only. Because at first compared to the demonstration of Ross Jeffries, I did not get her to blush, to jump on me, like none of that happened, really. So I was kind of frustrated, like I spent all that time memorizing for nothing. And I didn't really give it any second thought until a few months later, I think, because I listened back to the recording of that conversation. Yes, I was recording my conversations during dates back then, and obviously no one has ever listened to those recordings, it was only private. But I was trying to figure out what am I doing wrong when I talk with a girl, because none of them like me. So, at least as a friend, yes, but never past the friend zone case. So I was trying to figure out what the hell am I doing wrong. And when listening to the recording, I noticed something I had missed during the conversation. I noticed that just after we played that little game, the Twin Brothers game, just after that, she started telling me all the most intense moments she had in all of her past relationships with boyfriends. Back in that moment, initially, since she was talking about other guys, in my reduced perception of the world, it was, oh, okay, she doesn't like me anyway, so why bother? I hadn't connected the dots yet. That no, it was not about she doesn't like me. It was I had initiated a conversation that made her way more engaged emotionally into the conversation. And when I recalled it afterward, I noticed she was way more alive, interested in the conversation, even just from her voice tempo, her tone of voice on the recording. I noticed she was much more captivated about what she was saying than earlier in the conversation where it was kind of just random, yeah, what do you do, what do you, and this, oh yeah, you had a vacation, blah, blah, blah. It was really random. After I played that game, she was so much more compelled about the conversation and about anything she was saying or I was saying. But I was not aware of that back then, so I did not really escalate in any way with her because I was not aware that she was getting more interested, but I was just stuck and blind, like many beginner guys, not really seeing yet back then the signals women are sending. And I know if you are a woman watching this, you may think it is intuitive for everyone. It is definitely not. The signals you ladies are sending are not obvious for all the guys out there. It becomes obvious after some experience, but not in the beginning. But back to the topic, I started elaborating my own way of using therefore language patterns in seduction based on that impressive epiphany. at least impressive for me, based on all the rejections I had gotten so far. It was giving me some hope of, oh, maybe I could actually double down and use that in my next further conversations. So I elaborated a process figuring out, okay, how can I better use those types of questions, whether they are double binds or anything else, those kinds of questions to lead the mind and to lead the conversation with anybody whenever I want to influence, whether it is in a date or in a sales conversation, whatever. How can I better use questions? Because questions lead the mind, whereas statements are trying to impose something. If I tell you, for example, I am the best rider in the world, well, why should you believe me? Like, there's not really any proof, any evidence, I'm not famous, so why should you believe me? But if I ask you, oh, out of curiosity, did you notice anything you particularly liked in my book? Something that maybe you usually don't see in other books? Something that really made you connect the dots and made you more interested about the topic I was talking about? If I ask a question like this, it will be much harder to resist or refute what I say than if I give a brutal statement of I am the best, you should trust me. Well, you can refute that very easily. But a question is way harder to refute, and at the very least it is opening your mind on the possibility that what I talk about is true, is right, and it makes you consider the emotions I talk about anyway. To really simplify it before giving you the final epiphany I had with that, you can just mention whenever you want to lead somebody's mind with a question, you can just mention in your question the thing you want them to see in their mind, believe or think about. When you mention it, so instead of saying you should get on a date with me, saying what was the best date you ever had, and at the same time you are putting yourself in her side, so you are making her associate good memories with you, that was a much better way of influencing the mind, in my opinion, than trying to impose the statements that could just be wrong. So in the end, I designed my own game that I called the Intense Man, but I really wanted to gear it more toward sexual feelings, thoughts and ideas, because the Ross Jeffries version was pretty light in my opinion. It was a very good one, but it was very gentle. You know, it could be said to about anyone. I wanted my version to be more like to the point, of really making her think about the kind of things she would never think about with somebody she just met or somebody she's not 100% horny about yet. So in this little game I was asking questions more like, okay, let's say you have met the type of guy that you really want to marry, or at least you know you want that guy to be your boyfriend. And I don't even point at me, I just say in general, whenever you, being the girl, whenever you meet somebody, you find him so attractive that you would definitely want him to be your boyfriend, or at least you really want to know him better. And every woman on earth has had that experience at least one time. So you are appealing to a general world experience that every woman has had in her life. And since I don't give any specifics, I don't say, oh yeah, because he's rich, or because he's tall, or because I don't know, she has her own criteria, not mine. I just say the type of man that you definitely want to be your boyfriend, definitely. When you meet that type of man, would you be more inclined, if you had two options, double binds, would you be more inclined to make the first move to escalate physically with him? Once you know obviously that it is on, that you are attracted, he's attracted, would you make the first move? Or would you try to send him signals to make him do the first move with you physically? It doesn't matter what she answers. Whatever she answers, she will just connect to how does she want to be seduced by somebody. Whatever is her answer, she will start to associate to all those pretty intense feelings of being ready to escalate physically and sexually with somebody. Another question, more direct, would be same scenario. You meet that type of man that really stimulates you, blah blah blah. That is the man of your dreams, blah, 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 whatever. Then, two options. Do you think you would be more likely to have sex with him in a public place, not being seen obviously, but in a public place, so it is kind of, this dangerous feeling, or would you be more likely to have a threesome with him and another girl, or eventually another guy if you want, which one of those would you be more likely to choose? Same thing, it doesn't matter what she answers, she will just associate to what she is compelled about sexually. The end thing with that, and you can find the whole script right here, I will just outline it, you can screenshot and use it for yourself if you want, but basically, of course, the whole voice tonality has to come with it. It is not just the words, it is the attitude you have, all of that, but basically, whenever I use that, incredible things happened, and unfortunately, some of it I don't think I can tell on YouTube without taking some risks, but I can tell you that one experience, I used that little game with a girl that I already knew, so it was not a complete stranger. I knew her, but nothing had ever happened between her and I. I don't even think she had ever shown any sign of interest toward me. However, she started questioning me about those kinds of sex places called swingers clubs that she knew I had been there in the past with a friend of mine, and she started to question me about it just after I used that game with her. Later, and I don't think I can tell everything about it, we ended up, another girl who was bisexual, and a guy friend of mine, we have ended up, all of us, in a swinger club, and it was a pretty intense night, to say the least. Yeah, I'm really not sure how far I can go into the details, but basically it was a really wild night, and I just realized, even if, yes, we already knew each other, it was a social circle, so it was not a complete stranger in the street, anything, but still, it was me using that game that triggered her to engage me on that conversation that she was curious about, but was maybe not allowing herself to act upon. And that ended up into that situation. That was one of the most intense situations of my life, at least on the intimate side. And we even had, I think, a great connection, all of us together. I realized how all of those, language skills to better connect with each other can bring you incredible experiences in life. I wish I could tell you more about it. If we meet in person, you and I can tell you all the details and other adventures that happened to me too with all that stuff. But basically, I think the whole speed seduction patterns are interesting to think in unconventional ways about relationships, about the people you want to date, about how can you stimulate somebody's mind, whether it is in an intimate context or in a professional context, because I definitely used all those skills in hypnotherapy later, not to seduce somebody, but to bypass all the blockages somebody had during a session. Now, it was incredibly effective to bypass all the limiting beliefs they had and made them find their own resources by simply shifting from intimate sexual stuff to personal power, for example. It is just a different content, but the process to get there is the same. And in sessions, coaching or hypnotherapy, I definitely had a massive improvement of skills after using all those speed seduction stuff. I definitely became more able to help others connect with their internal resources and get past their own blockages. If you want a small grasp about how to use language to persuade somebody, to influence somebody's mind, you have a small document down below in the description called The 7 Steps to Master Sleight of Mouth, which is, I think, one of the best introduction if you're new to this, or if it is still confusing for you, how should I apply this or that. It is a great, I think, introduction. And below you have also a small covert hypnosis challenge to give you one assignment per day for 5 days to help you develop your skills with figuring out people from the inside, figuring out how to hypnotize somebody conversationally, and how to develop your language skills whenever you want to persuade someone.